Welcome to HardScript.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. I came home to the sound of a laugh I didn't recognize, drifting through the thin walls of our apartment like it belonged there. A man's laugh. Close. Too close. I stood in the doorway for a long second, my keys in my hand, dirt still on my boots from a job I'd wrapped up at Lowe's earlier that afternoon. My Chevy Silverado was still cooling in the driveway, engine ticking in the quiet. She didn't hear me come in. She never did, lately. My name is Mark Ellison, 38 years old, general contractor, the kind of man who measures life in studs, levels, and finished work. I build homes for a living. I restore structure where most people only see damage. My whole life has been about putting things back together. But that night, I realized something in my own house had already come apart. Hours before, we'd been sitting at IHOP after her morning coaching session at the gym. She was scrolling her phone, giggling at messages she wouldn't let me see. When I asked who it was, she waved it off. It's just flirting. Then she added something she thought sounded cute. Relax. It's harmless. I told her, quietly, that if it was harmless, she shouldn't cry the day I flirted back. Better. She froze for a second, like she didn't recognize the man sitting across from her. Suddenly, it wasn't funny anymore. But she changed the subject before I could say anything else, like she always did. Now, standing in the apartment, hearing that laugh through the wall, the pieces lined up. She'd been spending more time on her phone, she said, selling old equipment through Facebook Marketplace. She started leaving for early workouts, coming home smelling like someone else's cologne. And then there were the deliveries, packages she'd claim were gym gear, dropped off by the same guy who lived 2 doors down. An hourly delivery driver with too much free time and no boundaries. Always available, always around, and apparently always welcome. I didn't confront her. That's not who I am. I just stood there, listening. No yelling, no anger. Just a quiet shift inside me. Cold. Precise. I walked to the kitchen, picked up the Dunkin' cup she'd left on the counter, still warm, and set it down without drinking. Then I opened the junk drawer, pulled out the small tracking tile I'd bought months ago at Best Buy for a job, and turned it over in my palm. Some problems you don't fix with noise. Some you fix with silence. I didn't go to the bedroom. I didn't look for explanations or slip into the tired routine of asking questions she'd answer with rehearsed innocence. Instead, I walked to the workbench I kept in the hallway closet and took out a small notebook. Same one I used on job sites when I needed precise measurements. I flipped to a blank page and wrote 3 things, the way I'd seen military guys do when they didn't have room for emotion. Observe, confirm, act. From the living room, her voice floated through the wall, light and sweet in a way I hadn't heard directed at me in months. The neighbor's voice followed, deeper, slower, too comfortable for a man who wasn't family. I didn't get angry. I just listened, mapping the layout of their conversation like drywall behind studs. Close enough I could hear the smile in her voice when she told him he was funny. Close enough that I knew this wasn't new. She used to talk to me like that. Before the gym clients, the selfies, the men sending her fire emojis at 2 in the morning. She claimed it was engagement, part of her brand. I'd fix houses all day, come home tired, and she'd say I didn't understand her world anymore. But a lie doesn't hurt because it's loud. It hurts because it's casual. I checked her phone once, months back, when she left it unlocked on the counter. Messages from a buyer on Facebook Marketplace. Too friendly. Too familiar. She said he was just picking up her old dumbbells. I remember the moment she saw me looking at the screen. She didn't panic. She smirked. It's harmless. Relax. So I relaxed. On the outside. Now, standing alone in our dim hallway, I slid the small tracker into the lining of her gym bag. I'd bought it at Best Buy during a job last fall, never used it. I wasn't planning to follow her. I just wanted confirmation. A blueprint. Cheaters always create patterns. They're predictable in the same way rotten beams creak before they collapse. She came home an hour later, flushed from the cold night, acting surprised to see me awake. She said the neighbor had stopped by to borrow a tool. She said she was tired. She kissed my cheek like nothing was wrong. I nodded, quiet, steady. I didn't ask a single question. Some men argue. Some accuse. Some break things. I just watched her walk past me with the calm of someone who already knew the ending. The next morning, she left early for her first client. still pretending everything between us was normal. She moved around the apartment humming, the same way she did on days she needed me distracted. I watched her tie her shoes, toss her gym bag over her shoulder, and grab the Dunkin' cup she'd ordered the night before. She didn't notice how quiet I was. She rarely did anymore. She just said she'd be home around noon, depending on her schedule, and walked out the door with a lightness that didn't match the weight in my chest. When the door clicked shut, I pulled out my phone and opened the tracking app. The little that represented her moved down the block toward the gym. It hovered there for 10 minutes before drifting sideways, toward the back lot, where people usually parked when they weren't actually working out. Then it kept moving, steady, unhurried. She wasn't going to the gym. I didn't follow. I just watched the dot settle for 23 minutes at a building across from ours. His building. The neighbor. The same guy she swore barely spoke English when I mentioned seeing him around. The same man whose deliveries always seemed to arrive when she was home alone. The one she claimed was harmless. Just a guy with free time. Just friendly. Just polite. Just convenient. Patterns. Always patterns. By the time the dot returned to the gym half an hour later, I already knew what I needed. I walked to the closet, pulled out my work jacket, and grabbed the old toolbox I kept by the door. It wasn't for confrontation. It was cover. I headed out as if going to a job, letting the Chevy truck stay where it was. No sudden changes. Nothing suspicious. Outside, the morning air was cold enough to bite. I crossed the parking lot slowly, eyes steady, breathing even. The neighbor's apartment was quiet, blinds still drawn. I didn't knock. I didn't need to. Instead, I studied the small porch camera he'd recently installed, the one angled just a little too conveniently toward our unit. I made a note of it. I'd seen setups like that before. Cheap equipment bought through Facebook Marketplace, usually installed wrong. I walked past his door without breaking stride, toolbox in hand, acting like a man thinking about caulk and lumber instead of betrayal. But inside, things were shifting. Calm sharpening. Focus narrowing. Some people think silence means weakness, that not reacting means you don't feel anything. They never understand that silence is just the sound strategy makes right before it moves. By noon she was back home, cheerful, flushed, carrying her gym bag like it had actually seen a workout. I was in the living room pretending to review some measurements for a bathroom remodel. She didn't ask what I was working on. She walked past me, humming again, scrolling her phone with the kind of smile people don't practice for their spouses anymore. She said she was starving, grabbed leftovers from the fridge, and acted like the morning had been ordinary. I nodded and let her think I believed it. When she went to shower, I opened the tracking app again. Same pattern, same building, same 30-minute window of silence, followed by a return to the gym long enough to break a sweat and mask whatever came before. Patterns make people predictable, and predictable people leave openings. While the water ran, I pulled her laptop from under the couch where she hid it when she didn't want me asking questions. Her passcode hadn't changed. She always assumed I was too tired after work to notice things like that. I wasn't looking for messages or confessions. I was looking for something cleaner, colder. A timeline. Facebook Marketplace was still open in one of the tabs. Listings for equipment she never actually sold. Conversations with buyers who weren't buying. Most of the chats were harmless, shallow, the kind of attention she fed on. But one thread stood out. Her neighbor's name. An old listing she never deleted. The messages were short, nothing explicit, but the tone was wrong. Too familiar. Too easy. I scrolled through their exchange from weeks ago, watching it shift from small talk to subtle invitation. Nothing loud enough to be proof. Everything quiet enough to be true. I closed the laptop before she finished her shower. No confrontation. No scene. Just information. Another blueprint. When she stepped out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, she asked if I wanted to grab dinner later. I said I was working late on a project, something that needed my attention. She didn't question it. She'd stopped questioning anything about me months ago. Convenience cuts both ways. I changed into work clothes, grabbed the toolbox again, and left without adding details. She called after me, asking what time I'd be home. I said I'd text. I didn't. Some men chase answers. Some chase apologies. I chase structure. And her pattern had just given me the exact measurements I needed. I drove a few miles out of town, parked by an empty job site, and let the cold evening air settle my thoughts. I wasn't hiding. I just needed space to see the situation the way I'd look at a cracked foundation. No emotion. Just angles, leverage points, weak spots. Her pattern hadn't surprised me, not really. What struck me was the simplicity of it. Cheating right across the courtyard. Close enough, she didn't even bother to build a lie worth examining. That kind of carelessness always means one thing. She thought I'd never leave. Around 6, I returned to our complex, not home, just the parking lot. I stayed in the truck with the engine off, lights off, watching the walkway to her neighbor's place. The kind of quiet surveillance I'd done on job sites when subcontractors claimed they were working but weren't. No yelling, no confrontation, just watching. At 6:42, she stepped out of our apartment wearing leggings and a hoodie, the same outfit she always used when she said she was going for a late run. She stretched for show, glancing around like she needed the world to believe her. Then she walked, not toward the main road, not toward the trail behind the complex, but straight across the courtyard, right to his door. She didn't even hesitate. She knocked lightly once. The door opened immediately, like he'd been standing there waiting. I didn't move, didn't lean forward, didn't breathe any louder than before. I took out my notebook and wrote the time down. Then I noted the light that flicked on inside his apartment, the shadow passing in front of it, the door closing. Nothing dramatic, just confirmation. 40 minutes passed. I didn't count them emotionally. I counted them like I'd count drying time between coats of paint. Structure, sequence, predictability. When she finally came out, she didn't look around. She didn't act nervous. She walked back toward our place with the loose, satisfied posture of someone who believed she was untouchable. That was useful. Overconfidence always leaves openings. I let her get fully inside before stepping out of the truck. I didn't go home. Instead, I took the long way around the complex, stopping by the maintenance shed. The complex kept old security camera housings there, outdated models they'd replaced years ago. I picked one up, turning it in my hands, measuring angles, checking for blind spots. I'd worked with cameras on commercial builds before. People always assumed they were being watched. Most of the time, they weren't. Cameras were props unless someone decided to use them. On my way back, I paused by the neighbor's porch, studying the camera he'd installed himself. Cheap. Inconsistent. Bought secondhand, probably through Facebook Marketplace, meaning it could be bypassed without effort. Back in the parking lot, I looked up at our window. The light was on in the living room. She was moving around, probably fixing dinner, probably texting him from across the courtyard. Some men explode when they see the truth. Some break down. Me? I was already drawing the map of my exit. Quiet. Precise. Permanent. I didn't go inside right away. I walked the perimeter of our complex the same way I'd walk a property before a renovation estimate. Slow, quiet, noting every detail people overlook. The courtyard lights flickered in the usual places. A railing on the second floor was loose. The neighbor's blinds were still half open from when she'd stepped inside earlier. Small details. But small details always tell the truth long before people do. When I finally walked back into our apartment, she was at the stove cooking like she hadn't just come from another man's place. She said she thought I'd be home earlier. She asked if I wanted something to eat. I said I wasn't hungry. She didn't press. She never pressed when the guilt was fresh. She just filled the silence with meaningless updates about clients and new gym memberships. Her words bounced around the kitchen like they were looking for something to stick to. I wasn't listening. I was studying her movements. The way she kept checking her phone. The way her thumb hovered over notifications like she was waiting for one specific name. The way she smiled when she thought I wasn't looking. Light. Effortless. Detached. After dinner, she went to shower again, claiming she needed to wash off the run. I sat at the table and opened the tracking app. Her morning route. Her midday route. Her evening trip across the courtyard. 3 clean confirmation points. The kind of symmetry you don't get by accident. When she came out of the bathroom, she asked if everything was okay. I told her everything was fine. My voice was steady, the same tone I used when explaining structural issues to homeowners. Calm, controlled, already decided. She accepted the answer immediately. People always accept the version of reality they prefer. Later that night, when she fell asleep, I got out of bed and walked to the living room. Her laptop was where she left it, screen still faintly glowing. I opened the marketplace messages again, scanning for details I missed earlier. Not evidence, patterns, routines, times. She and the neighbor mostly talked during her lunch breaks, early mornings, and late evenings. Always when I was on job sites or driving between lows and new builds. Always when she thought I was too busy to notice. Midway through the chat history, I found the first shift where the tone changed, where she started sending him pictures from the gym, where he told her she looked happier than she did at home, where she agreed without hesitation. I didn't feel the hit, not in the emotional way. It landed like a measurement on a blueprint. Just another line, another angle, another piece of a structure already leaning. I shut the laptop, stood in the dark, and let the next step settle into place. Some men demand explanations. Some demand apologies. Me? I was preparing to erase myself from her world so completely she wouldn't realize it until the silence closed around her like a locked door. The next morning, I woke before sunrise and sat at the kitchen table with my notebook open. Not to vent, not to rehearse a confrontation, just to outline the order of operations. Digital erasure isn't emotional. It's structural. You remove beams one at a time until the frame collapses on its own. No force, just absence. She came out of the bedroom in her workout clothes, hair bundled up, scrolling through her phone like she was reviewing a script. She said she was meeting a client early. She said she might grab breakfast after. She didn't say where. I didn't ask. I just watched her slip her gym bag over her shoulder, the same bag with the tracker hidden in the lining, and walk out the door humming lightly. The moment it closed behind her, I powered up my laptop. First step, shared accounts. I left the financial ones alone for now, but I removed myself from the little things she used to pull me into. Our couples group chat. The fitness accountability group, she added me to. The old neighborhood chat we barely used. One after another, I left them without a message. Quiet exits. Notifications she'd wake up to later and pretend not to understand. Then I moved to social media. I didn't block her yet. Blocking is loud. Blocking signals anger. I just removed our photos. Years of trips, birthdays, Sunday breakfasts. Gone. Clean pages, clean feed, clean frame. A life she was no longer part of. I deleted our anniversary posts, the gym pictures she made me take, the home remodel progress shots. All of it. Not a trace left that tied us together publicly. Around 8, my phone buzzed twice. Marketplace notifications. She'd listed something new. A yoga mat she never used. The neighbor had already liked the listing. I stared at the screen for a moment, not in pain, just recognition. They weren't even hiding it anymore. Casual betrayal always reveals itself first in the small things. At 9, I opened the tracking app. Her doubt wasn't at the gym. It was across the courtyard again. Same building. Same window of time. Same routine. While she was there, I moved to the next phase. I backed up my contacts, removed her from my favorites, deleted our message thread entirely. That thread held years of life, but I cleared it without hesitation. Clean breaks don't allow archives. When her dot finally moved back toward the gym, I closed the app and packed a small duffel bag. Just clothes, tools, a few essentials. No drama, no rushing. I placed it behind the seat of the truck where she'd never notice it was gone. At 10:30, she texted asking if I wanted lunch later. I responded with a curt yes. No emoji, no softness. She replied with a heart. I didn't open it. Some men confront their wives at the height of betrayal, demanding tears and explanations. I chose something sharper. A disappearing act in slow motion. A silence she wouldn't hear until the last door closed, and she realized I'd already left the version of me she thought she could betray. She came home around noon, cheerful, carrying that brightness she always wore after being somewhere she shouldn't have been. She asked if I wanted to grab lunch, maybe go to IHOP the way we used to. I told her I'd already eaten. She looked disappointed for a moment, then covered it with a shrug. She didn't ask what I ate. She didn't ask where. She just moved on, scrolling her phone like she was checking for someone else's attention. While she talked about her morning, I looked at her the way I'd look at a wall hiding water damage, quietly, assessing the inside, not the surface. She noticed my silence and asked if everything was okay. I said it was. Steady tone. Neutral. Already gone. Later that afternoon, I drove to Lowe's under the pretense of picking up a few things for a job. I wandered the aisle slowly, not because I needed anything, but because the store had a kind of order I understood. Tools in the right place. Shelves aligned. Everything labeled, everything clear. It helped me finalize the decision that had been forming for days. When you build something long enough, you know exactly when it's time to tear it down and walk away. On the way back, I checked the tracking app again. Her dot was at home, unmoving. The neighbor's dot wasn't tracked, but it didn't need to be. Her pattern didn't change during daylight hours. His was predictable too. Always around, always available, always waiting to be useful to someone else's wife. When I parked, she greeted me at the door like the morning hadn't happened. She wrapped her arms around me, pressed her face into my chest, and said she missed me. The words landed flat. Not because they were lies, but because they came from someone who didn't know what she'd already lost. That evening, while she napped on the couch, I went through the last digital steps. I turned off shared calendar access without notifying her. I removed myself from subscription renewals we'd set up together. I deleted the home Wi-Fi password from her devices and reconfigured the network under a new login she'd never guess. Not out of spite, just hygiene. Clean systems stay clean. She didn't stir. She didn't feel the shift. I stood over her for a moment, not with anger, not even with sadness, but with clarity. She thought betrayal was something you could hide inside small moments. She didn't realize the quiet man beside her had already started dismantling the life she believed was permanent. Some departures come with slammed doors and shouted words. Mine would come like a structural collapse, silent, thorough, and irreversible. She woke up from her nap in that soft, half-confused way she always did, expecting the world to be the same as when she closed her eyes. She asked what time it was, if I wanted dinner, if I was in a weird mood. I told her I was fine. She accepted it without hesitation, the way people do when they're certain they still understand you. She didn't notice the subtle gaps opening beneath her feet. She didn't notice that our shared photos were gone, or that her phone had quietly logged out of accounts she assumed were still connected. Not yet. After dinner, she curled up on the couch and scrolled through her phone, smiling at something she didn't show me. Probably a message from him. Probably something small, something stupid, something she'd call harmless if I asked. I didn't ask. I just watched her, studying the small ways she had already drifted from the life we'd built. You don't need raised voices to see the truth. It pulses in the quiet. When she finally went to bed, I stayed up, reviewing the last of the digital ties between us. Our playlists, our shared grocery list, the notes app we both used when planning remodel ideas. I removed myself from each one. No messages, no explanations, just absence, clean and sharp. Somewhere in between, a Dunkin' receipt popped up on her phone through a notification she hadn't silenced. She'd been there earlier with him, the timestamp lining up perfectly with her morning client session. That tiny detail didn't hurt. It clarified. Around 1 a.m., I packed the rest of what I needed into the truck. Not much. Clothes, documents, tools. The essentials of a man who decided the structure he'd been maintaining was no longer worth reinforcing. The apartment was silent except for her breathing in the bedroom. She slept heavily, peacefully, like someone who believed tomorrow would continue exactly the same. She had no idea she'd already lost the version of me that cared. Before I left, I stood in the doorway and looked around the place we'd shared. Not with nostalgia, with inspection, like a job site at the end of a contract. I'd done what I could, fixed what was fixable, reinforced what mattered. But sometimes the rot isn't in the wood. It's in the people who live inside the structure. I didn't wake her. I didn't write a note. I didn't touch her phone or leave a message on hers. I locked the door behind me and walked across the lot, calm and steady, the night air sharp in my lungs. Some men leave with shouts and slammed fists. I left with the kind of silence that can't be undone, the kind that echoes louder than any goodbye. By the time the sun began to rise, I was already 20 miles away, parked behind an old industrial building where no one would think to look for me. The truck was warm, the cab quiet, my duffel settled on the seat beside me. I didn't feel free. Freedom isn't a feeling. It's a silence, the kind that comes when the last thread connecting you to someone finally snaps without sound. My phone buzzed around 6. First a missed call, then another, then a text asking where I was. She said she woke up and couldn't find me. She said she was worried. She said she was confused. I didn't open any of it. Not because I wanted to hurt her, but because the conversation she thought we were still having no longer existed. At 6:30, the calls started coming faster. Her voice messages shifted from casual to uneasy, then uneasy to panicked. She asked if something happened. She asked if I was okay. She asked if we could talk. I listened to none of it. Not a single word. My silence was the only language left between us. Around 7, she tried video calling. The screen lit up with her name again and again. I set the phone face down on the dashboard and stepped out of the truck. The air smelled like metal and early morning fog. I walked a few feet away, letting her calls ring into the empty lot. She would check the apartment next. She would see my clothes missing, the tools gone, my side of the dresser empty. She would open her laptop and finally notice the erased photos. She would look through our message thread and realize there was nothing left. She would check the accounts she assumed were shared, only to find her access gone. It wouldn't happen all at once. It would happen in waves, each one hitting harder than the last. At 8, she finally sent the message I knew was coming. She said she didn't understand. She said she thought everything was fine. She said we could work it out. I read that one, not because I needed to, but because it confirmed what I already knew. She never believed I could walk away. She never thought the quiet man would choose himself. I powered off the phone. Not muted. Not silenced. Off. I climbed back into the truck and started the engine. The road ahead was empty, open, clean, like fresh lumber waiting for its first cut. I didn't know exactly where I was going yet, but I knew where I wasn't returning. Some men reclaim their lives with noise. I reclaimed mine with absence, leaving only the echo of everything she took for granted. Been through it. When they crossed a line, and you made sure they felt it.